Welcome everyone to day 8 of Auroville Festival. And this year we are invoking the mother, one of the qualities of mother, humility. And, uh, and on the 8th day, the focus is on Mahasaraswati, and we are invoking her attribute, self-giving. And today, for the discussion, we have Shri Aravindan Neelakandanji, Member Governing Board, Auroville Foundation. We have Dr. Jayanti Ravi ji, Secretary, Auroville Foundation. And we have Dr. Chhalamayi Reddy ji, Principal Shri Aurobindo International School, Hyderabad. And Shri Aravindan Neelakandanji is joining us online. He couldn't be present physically, so we have him on screen. And because of some technical glitches, we would like to first hear him, and then I invite the panelists to come on stage and give their remarks also. And before we begin, I would like to start with an invocation to Mahasaraswati and by reading a passage from the text The Mother by Sri Aurobindo. It's a bit long. I request your patience. Mahasaraswati is the mother's power of work and a spirit of perfection and order. The youngest of the four, she is the most skillful in executive faculty and the nearest to physical nature. Maheshwari lays down the large lines of the world forces. Mahakali drives their energy and impetus. Mahalakshmi discovers their rhythms and measures, but Mahasaraswati presides over their detail of organization and execution, relation of parts, and effective combination of forces and unfailing exactitude of result and fulfillment. The science and craft and technique of things are Mahasaraswati's province. Always she holds in her nature and can give to those whom she has chosen the intimate and precise knowledge, the subtlety and patience, the accuracy of intuitive mind and conscious hand and discerning eye of the perfect worker. This power is the strong, the tireless, the careful and efficient builder, organizer, administrator, technician, artisan, and classifier of the worlds. When she takes up the transformation and new building of the nature, her action is laborious and minute, and often seems to our impatience slow and interminable. But it is persistent, integral, and flawless. For the will in her works is scrupulous, unsleeping, and infatigable. Leaning over us, she notes and touches every little detail, finds out every minute defect, gap, twist, or incompleteness, considers and weighs accurately all that has been done and all that remains still to be done hereafter. Nothing is too small or apparently trivial for her attention. Nothing, however, impalpable or disguised or latent can escape her. Molding and remolding, she labors each part till it has attained its true form, is put in its exact place in the whole, and fulfills its precise purpose. In her constant and diligent arrangement and rearrangement of things, her eye is on all needs at once, and the way to meet them, and her intuition knows what is to be chosen and what rejected, and successfully determines the right instrument, the right time, the right conditions, and the right process. Carelessness and negligence and indolence she abhors. All scamped and hasty and shuffling work, all clumsiness and apopray and misfire, all false adaptation and misuse of instruments and faculties and leaving of things undone or half done is offensive and foreign to her temper. When her work is finished, nothing has been forgotten, no part has been misplaced or omitted or left in a faulty condition. All is solid, accurate, complete, admirable. Nothing short of a perfect perfection satisfies her, and she is ready to face an eternity of toil, if that is needed for the fullness of her creation. Therefore, of all the mothers, Pars, she is the most long suffering with man and his thousand imperfections. Kind, smiling, close, and helpful, not easily turned away or discouraged, insistent even after repeated failure. Her hand sustains our every step on condition that we are single in our will and straightforward and sincere. For a double mind she will not tolerate, and her revealing irony is merciless to drama and histrionics and self deceit and pretense. A mother to our wants, a friend in our difficulties, a persistent and tranquil counselor and mentor, chasing away with her radiant smile the clouds of gloom and fretfulness and depression, reminding always of the ever present help, pointing to the eternal sunshine. She is firm, quiet, and persevering in the deep and continuous urge that drives us towards the integrality of the higher nature. All the work of the other parts leans on her for its completeness, for she assures the material foundation, elaborates the stuff of detail, and erects and rivets the armor of the structure. By Sri Aurobindo.
Good evening, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be back in Auroville and be here. I want to really appreciate the excellent work done by the Auroville, am I audible? Auroville Festival team. Of course, we are in the process of further institutionalizing it, and I'm sure next year it'll be even better attended, organized, and all of it. But I think this is a great effort. A big shout out and thanks to the entire team, particularly Lakshay, for doing this. Humility and self-giving, I think, is definitely the quality that is the focus for this year's festival. And today, the emphasis on Mahasaraswati as well, that Lakshay read out from this small book, but which is such a powerful book of Sri Aurobindo called The Mother, which is always a source of immense strength, courage, light for each one of us who has faith, sincerity, and surrender. As the book mentions, when there are questions and you open this book, it gives you phenomenal strength. And again, going back, looking at this topic, and I think these efforts are very important because this makes all of us again plumb, go back, reflect, and try and understand these topics better in the context of our lived life. Because there are words, lived words, that Mother Sri Aurobindo and all these great sons and daughters of humanity have given us. But when we also try and transpose these with some of our experiences, our life journeys, I think it adds a lot of value. So in that sense, I think one key spirit, one key picture that comes to my mind when we talk of humility and self-giving, for a lot of us, we know Mother's name was Meera Alfasa. There was also another Meera from India, from the western part of India. People say her name originated from the word Mihir, Mihira. Mihira became Meera. There is a thought, so it was a modification of that. And there's a small song that she composed, which I think is like, could be likened to a spiritual signature tune for Auroville. She said, "Chakar rakho ji, make me a servant, a servitor, a willing servitor of the divine." And she says, I may build big palaces, unche unche mahal banasu, which in Hindi means I might make big palaces, which means maybe we're building the line of goodwill in an Auroville context, and I'll have little which I may, in the middle of it, it's a Punjabi and a Gujarati Hindi word, I may keep little windows in it. And through those windows, what she means is in everything that I do, the punctuation mark, the pores, the space, the life breath, it is the darshan of her Samariya. And who is that? Lord Krishna, or the divine. So in that sense, I think if we understand that. And that's what the call of and the call for action in Auroville was about, seeing if we can invoke that spirit of self-giving humility and take this forward. Mother says humility is that state of consciousness in which, whatever the realization, you know, the infinite is still in front of you. So through ups and downs, challenges, crises, and when I will look back at my work life, there are many, many instances like this. And one of the instances that comes to my mind in recent times is that of COVID. When we had this pandemic that hit us about 4 years ago, 2019 and beginning of 2020, we had no clue what was this, what is the kind of precaution, even if entities like the top researchers, the top leaders at cutting edge research gave some lead on what are the do's and don'ts. The next state would be a 180 degrees turn and say, no, it's just the opposite. So there was this complete chaos, fear, apprehension. But in the midst of it all, you realize that yet, if you have that faith and continue one step, it's like a little lamp. You may not know where you're headed. You kind of know overall you're headed in that direction, but you have enough light to just show you where is it that the next step of your foot can be placed tentatively and then strengthen it before the next and so on. So I think that is something that keeps us in different contexts. It could be crisis that you encounter in a corporate office if you're the head of an institution, or if you're a part of a team. It could be at home as a member of a family who's dealing with growing up children, or with elderly parents, or anything at all, or your own conflicts, because we're all human beings, human nature, we're all vulnerable for so many things. So in the midst of this, I think, as Mother said, a sincere self-giving, a sincere humility, and one is sheltered from all danger. It may seem too simple to be true, but I think this is so important. I also felt like sharing. Lakshay will have to tell me when time is beginning to be up, because I don't want to eat up on Chhalamayi Reddy's time. There's a little story some years back that I read. May I share this with you? It's a story that got me a little puzzled. Simple story, but there's a very famous Gujarati writer, also known as Darshak. But his name was Manubhai Pancholi, and he was decorated perhaps with some of the best awards and so on of the time. He wrote a very simple but a very powerful story. It's like this. There's a king, and in his palace he has a great, like Jaya is so very passionate and committed to art. Where is she? There. So he was a great connoisseur of good quality art, and he said, we have Jaya ji, also an outstanding Vidwan Vidushi of Veena, who's here. But there's also a Jaya here from Auroville, the Auroville Jaya, who's the person who holds this pavilion. So he wanted to get the best artist possibly, someone who could really depict various scenes from the life of Lord Krishna. Somehow Krishna is coming again today. And he said, the hunt was on, and finally he located somebody who was unparalleled. He was absolutely, several notches beyond whatever he could have ever imagined. But this artists come with a temperament, right? So this artist said, while he was really good, he said, I'll do the work, but you will have to do it at my pace. When I get inspired, I'll present what I have to, and I cannot be pressured into doing anything. And so the king gave his word. And after that, he must have been wondering, why did I do that? Because this artist went all around the kingdom and the neighboring kingdoms, everywhere, to really look for a face, a young child that would inspire him to paint the Krishna who was so full of innocence and yet so full of mischief, the one whose eyes radiated light, delight, joy, and all the navarasas that explain humanity, human beings, but completely imbued with divinity, which is what he was. He was an avatar. And finally, he spots this child somewhere, this young child, and he's so mesmerized by him and actually invites that child, gets him to be there, and he paints a whole set of paintings to depict the life of baby Krishna. And then after some time, he's still now the next episode in Krishna's life where he has to kill Kamsa. So that is the episode that is due. So he really is now looking for somebody who's very wicked, mean, has all those qualities that will inspire him, and he's not able to. He goes to every prison in the kingdom, looks at all the convicts, looks at everybody, and he says, no, I don't find that quality, that, almost a quality of real hatred, anger, cruelty, all of that. And he searches and searches, and the king finds that, well, his time is ticking. It's 5 years, 10 years. He's just not painting. And the king had given his word. So he's at a loss to get this man to do something. Maybe not very different from our story in Auroville, right? For a different reason though. So they had a log jam for many, many years. And this man goes all across different, and finally, one day, there's a convict that they're transporting across the border. And he sees him and says, wow, I've got the inspiration for Kamsa, the cruel king Kamsa. And finally locates him, gets him to that place, gets him to pose. And just as he gets the easel, which was all probably dusty, ready, the paints and brushes, and starts, this Kamsa looks at all of it, and there's something that shifts in him. His eyes cloud, he starts crying, and he sobs uncontrollably. What happened? It was the same young boy who was initially in a very unpolluted state, less ego, nothing, naive, and the same boy with all this coloring of ego, layers of ego. When he got this prominence, he had become so wicked and wretched. He had become as bad a culprit, a criminal as one could imagine. And he really repents. Of course, the painting is completed. And the story ends there. But I'm a bit of a die-hard optimist. So I fought with Manu Bhai. He would sometimes come home. I said, I didn't like the ending of your story. And I said, this is to say that human nature can change. We all have hope. We're not doomed to be bad forever. And I said, why not another twist in the story? This is my little addition to it, license, the poetic license or story license. And I said, some years passed. And then there was this convict who reformed and learned driving. He got a driving license. As my grandson would say, he would ask me, do you have a license? Are you licensed to drive? So he managed to clear the driving license. And finally, he's driving somebody. And there's this corporate honcho or someone who's going through a real big battle, a family feud or some big merger, acquisition deal. And he's into a lot of stress fighting with all of them. And he's the one who counsels him at that time, having gone through all this wisdom, and he becomes Yogeshwar. So we can really have that. So the point is, ego, as Arvindanji so beautifully said, it has a way of really coming. Even simplicity, even self-giving, even humility can get eaten up by ego. And it may again be ego wanting to come through that vicious mode of pretending to be that. And so that is something we have to be very careful about. And I just want to perhaps end, I think, with something beautiful about from Savitri that I really liked. Where are we? Incidentally, this is something I just wanted to share, excerpt from a conversation with Sat Prem. Someone from Auroville, I'm just reading out this conversation of mothers. I hope we all enjoy this as we read this. Someone from Auroville wrote to me that he thought he had come here to obey no one but himself, or words to that effect. Does it ring a bell for all of us? Maybe all of us have a streak of that. But he noticed, it's a he, but it could be a she. He noticed there are rules and laws, and he said, I'm not going to do any of this. I'm a free man and refuse to do this. This was reported to me naturally, so I wrote to him. Mother says one is free only when it is the divine who makes decisions in each one of us. Otherwise, men are slaves of their desires, their habits, of all conventions, all laws, all rules. And the more they think they're free, the more bound they are. So, on that note, I want to conclude, and if there's time, we'll, in the end, late maybe. I thought this was something very beautiful, especially today morning. How many of us were at the beautiful bonfire this morning? I saw something spectacular this time, which I haven't witnessed in the past. Possibly it's my inability to have noticed it in the past. I don't know, or if it happened. Normally, you'd see these sparks from the bonfire or whatever they burn. It would go up, and you'd see them all of different sizes, different shapes, going up and staying there. And the thought that would come is, all of us here are perhaps like those little sparks. Somebody's ahead of us, somebody's on our right, left. And then our egos, we say that, well, I've done this, I've done that. And so it would be a very, very humbling experience to see all these sparks. Because after all, as Sanatana Dharma, as Sri Aurobindo in the Uttarpara speech has said, it's the divine spark in each one of us, in everything, living, non-living. So we're all that, not just human beings, but everything. So in that collectivity, how can one little piece of ember or spark say that I'm superior to this, or my views, your views, and so on? And that was there. But today something beautiful was noticed by me. Not only did these sparks fly up, I saw some of them turning and coming down. Did any of you notice it? And some of them were actually, it was like a pathway, and you saw these sparks actually walking down the steps, down a ramp there. And when I was reading this, I thought it really rang a bell. Sri Aurobindo in Letters of Yoga saw this. This is from Savitri though. In the incandescent light of his yogic vision. And I quote, this is from Savitri, I saw the omnipotent's flaming pioneers over the heavenly verge which turns towards life, come crowding down the amber stairs of birth. And when the stairs of birth is mentioned, I can see the words, cling to truth. Does it ring a bell? Because every time we go to the ashram and you see the staircase in Mother's own writing, that's something that forerunners of a divine multitude, out of the parts of the morning star, they came. Paula Murphy, our own Paula Murphy, is making a birthing center called Morning Star. And we're hoping that we have that. I'm trying to weave it with our realities and the beautiful contributions at Auroville. Out of the parts of the morning star, they came into the little room of mortal life, isn't it? Sometimes we become so petty in our words, thoughts, actions. We have a heart which seems so small. Each one of us goes through those moments, and which is when we have to shake ourselves up. I saw them cross the twilight of an age, the sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn, the great creators with wide brows of calm. I think this work that we all have to do requires phenomenal patience. There's going to be all kinds of reactions, attacks, anger, humiliation, dukh, apman, kasht, sab sahiya, kutila jagat ki hasi, meera kahe prabhu, giridhar nagar, aakho saro jagat ke vasi. But the next lines is, I think, for most of us who are here, or in different worlds similar to this, the massive barrier breakers of the world, when you question the status quo, which is what we are here. It's not to just be in that comfort zone of letting everything be the way it is in my comfort zone, your comfort zone, but questioning the status quo, the massive barrier breakers of the world, the laborers in the quarries of the gods, the messengers of the incommunicable. Because sometimes this vision that we get, there's something that goads us, that pushes us, that makes us act. Our rational mind may not really explain. We may not know why we are doing that, but there's something that pushes us to take some actions. We do it. And it's probably intuition, or it is the divine. Divine has its own designs, its way of making us work. The laborers in the quarries of God, the messengers of the incommunicable, the architects of immortality. So, on that note, I think if we can, as Mother said, if there is a way to do this, and as Sri Aurobindo also said, humility is needful, but constant self-deprecation does not help. Excessive self-esteem and self-depreciation are both wrong attitudes. To recognize any defects without exaggerating them is useful, but once recognized, it is no good dwelling on them always. You must have the confidence that the divine force can change everything, and you must let the force work. Let the force, the very beautiful, reassuring words that that force can transform our nature. After all, this whole thing, what are the problems we're facing? Whether it's in a small room, whether it's in a big continent, it's in a big meeting of political leaders of different countries and so on. It's end of the day, it's human nature. And for that, I think these are very, if we surrender and if we offer ourselves with faith, sincerity, and surrender to the divine, I think the divine has a way of kneading our nature, transforming us, and creating a new us. So, on that note, thank you again. Namaste.
Madam Secretary, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for reminding us of the little, large, small, different sizes of sparks in each one of us, which we need to perhaps rekindle and remember to rekindle often in us. One little remark, perhaps you noted about the artist. If we can, as artists, also develop the quality of humility, maybe we would not come with that infamous temperament. Now I go towards Dr. Chhalamayi Reddy ji. She's a principal of Sri Aurobindo International School. And even Sri Aurobindo ji and you also refer to this ego that we develop with age, but you work with children. How do you bring these qualities of humility and self-giving? How do you nurture it? How do you inculcate it? How do you preserve it right from the young age? What are your insights around that? Please share.
Om Namo Bhagavate. First, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this very special privilege to be part of the Auroville Festival and to share the stage with Jayanti ji. Lakshya, I would probably like to respond to you after what I have to share. And whatever I have to share is largely about what the mother has written about humility. And so I would just probably try to stick to that. I think we are all aware of the mother's symbol. And when we look at the mother's symbol, humility is between sincerity and gratitude. So all the attributes of the Mahashaktis are very much interconnected and interlinked. But interestingly, what I observed is the fact that humility is between sincerity and gratitude. And to me, it just means that, when one is truly sincere, true to oneself, that there is an overwhelming gratitude which rises within us. And that brings about the essential sense of humility. I would like to draw your attention to the photograph of the mother. I think all of us are aware of the photograph of the mother where she is doing Namaste. And I interestingly found that she has written something connected with humility. So, referring to the mother with folded hands doing pranam, and this is a conversation written out by Mona Sarkar under probably in the book Victory of the Truth. So he asked the question, yes, mother, but mother, why are you doing pranam in the photo? Why and to whom? Then the mother's answer, don't you see that I'm greeting the truth? This is the necessary posture. It is the attitude of adoration and humility. I wait patiently for the day when truth will be the sole guide. And it is so important, this attitude. If the earth wants the divine truth to be established in its entirety, this is the attitude it must take. This is the only thing which can save the earth. To remain in this attitude and aspire upwards, the earth must learn to salute the truth with this attitude. This is the adoration as well as obeisance. This is what it must learn. It represents much more, something profound and sublime. So hence, when I said that, between sincerity and gratitude, and then I read what the mother has, written about this photograph, I think all the three come together very well, and especially the feeling of being very grateful. And it is a gratitude which is not something on the surface. It is a kind of an experience of all of us in front of something that is beyond all of us. So when we are, into a kind of a journey which is so much bigger, so much vaster, so much more, grand in terms of the very, I should say, the very plan of the divine, how can one not be but be humble about it? So the experience, for example, Auroville itself, I think every moment that we are here, at least I am here, I keep feeling this sense of the grace upon all of us, an overwhelming feeling of gratitude which fills us with a sense of humility. So humility more in the sense of being able to appreciate, to be able to receive, to be able to be open to the divine action which is amidst us all the time. And it is something that on a personal level also, I think it's not only about me. I think all our journeys, if we have a sense of humility to look back into our lives, all the little things which gets arranged for what we attribute to be positive, all we are able to feel the hand of the Divine Mother, the the Supreme Divine, to be able to bring us to where we are now, present. And to me personally also, I have seen that all the things which have not happened actually has a greater grace. When we look back and we understand why things have not happened in a certain way, we really feel overwhelmed and we feel very humble about it, and we understand that behind some things which have not happened in the way we have desired, the grace has been more active. And that also makes us feel very humble. So, as I said, I speak for all of us in terms of all our lives, different journeys that we have done. Now, there is another, so of course, so every one of us, including myself, Lakshya, you were asking about the school. So the mother herself has blessed the institute, the center at Hyderabad with the name and the symbol, and blessed us by herself being the president, the Institute of Human Study, which was founded in 1964, and the name of the school as well as Sri Aurobindo School. Everything in her own handwriting she has blessed. So the feeling of being overwhelmed is something which sustains me, that sense of being able to be very humble, to see that there is a mission, a divine mission that one has to, kind of walk towards, the ideals which have been laid. So that is something which keeps unfolding, in terms of self-giving. I think this is again the theme which is attached to what we have spoken about, humility. So that is the impetus, that is the elan which rises within us to be able to offer ourselves for this great ideal. So when we are always in front, the consciousness in us is, always looking at this high ideal, I think that makes us to feel very much grateful and humbled about it. So the other important quotation I would just like to also read about what the mother said. She said, the question was, what is the right and the wrong way of being humble? So she says it is very simple. When people are taught to be humble, they think immediately of being humble before other men. And that humility is wrong. True humility before the divine, that is a precise, exact, living sense that one is nothing, one can do nothing, understand nothing without the divine. That even if one is exceptionally intelligent and capable, this is nothing in comparison with the divine. This is nothing in comparison with the divine consciousness. And this sense one must always keep, because then one always has the true attitude of receptivity, a humble receptivity that does not put personal pretensions in opposition to the divine. So she continues by saying, to be humble means for the mind, the vital, and the body never to forget that without the divine they know nothing, are nothing, and can do nothing. Without the divine, they are nothing but ignorance, chaos, and impotence. The divine alone is truth, life, power, love, felicity. So, this humility is not before human beings but before the divine. I think this is something we all need to be clear. It is a kind of an inner humility that Arvindanji also was speaking about. And this subordination of one's ego, you were speaking about ego, one's own personality to the general opinion or general sense is important. This is not the mother's words, this is what I'm saying. When we speak about a collective life, particularly for all of us who are, our ideal is to live a collective life, it is very important. Humility is obviously an indispensable quality. And we need to always remember that nobody can say he or she knows everything. And things go on changing. So what was true yesterday may not be so today. So it is very important that, we need to concede our limitations, the possibility of being wrong, and understanding that the other person may be right. Because we do keep clinging to our own sense of what is right and wrong. So we need not be always right. And humility is something which, again, I think it resonates with what Arvind ji has said, that it is not something which can be learned or known. It has to be experienced, it has to be lived from within. So, and we all of us would, when as we progress in spiritual life, we grow in humility. So I would just like to also conclude with, again, what Mona Sarkar has written. With full faith and surrender, we are ready for thy victory. This is again, following the mother's photograph of the pranam. And she says, this is the only true humility, and with it come quiet and peace. This is also the surest shield against all hostile attack. Indeed, in the human being, it is always the door of pride at which the adversary knocks, for it is the door which opens to let him enter. In truth, sincere humility is our safeguard. It is the surest way to the indispensable dissolution of the ego. Humility and sincerity are the best safeguards. Without them, each step is a danger. With them, the victory is certain. Whatever is your personal value or even your individual realization, the first quality required in yoga is humility.
Thank you, Chhalamayi. Thank you for also reminding us that we need to be very discerning between this capital H and a small h when we read humility, the humility towards each other and humility towards the higher force. Uh, the past 7 days, I have been asking questions to the guest. And because this year's theme is humility, at least on the last day, I would like to observe and little bit keep myself in the background and invite you all to ask the question to the panelist. So anyone with any remark, question? Today our tech capacity is also a little humble, so I request you to please come here and ask the question. Yes.
It was very nice hearing to both of you, madam. When you were talking about humility, there is this sloka in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, Ahankara Vimudatma, Karta Aham Yadi Manyate. So he talks about this thing called Ahankar.
Come away from the mic. Read it. Yeah.
So Krishna talks about Ahankar. Ahankara Vimudatma, Karta Aham Yadi Manyate. He talks in this sloka. There is also another verse where Chanakya says that the first thing that a king's teacher should teach the student, the prince, is not about the knowledge of arts and knowledge of war, but to control three aspects. Because without controlling these three aspects, however much he has studied, he will be an idiot, he says. He says if he could not control his desire, whatever he has learned, he will lose everything. If he cannot control his anger, whatever knowledge you have given him, it will not be useful at times of use. And if he cannot identify and control his own ego, whatever you have taught, he will not use it himself. So if only the student has learned to control desire, control anger, and control ego, his knowledge that he has learned will be of use to him. Otherwise, as Karna forgot everything in war, he will also forget everything in times of need. Krishna once again says, Ahankara Vimudatma Kartaham Yadi Manyate, because there are these three things in Sanskrit, which is Mada, Muda. Krishna says Vimuda. Somebody who is ignorant is called Mada. Somebody who is ignorant of his ignorance is called Muda. Somebody who is the most ignorant is called Vimuda. He says the moment Ahankar, ego, enters into a being, however learned he might be, he will become king of fools. So the word Ahankar, a lot of us, when we translate to ego, the perfect translation is not there because the English translation ego and the Sanskrit idea of Ahankar is one different from the other. Can you explain this, madam?
Thank you. Ma'am, you can keep it on. Yes, one single press.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
I think he's. Can you hear me? Hello? I think he's quoted from Bhagavad Gita, and this is absolutely true. Sometimes not knowing or even acknowledging or that you don't know, or sometimes not even knowing that you're not knowing, keeps you in better stead. But arrogance is something that, even if you had some knowledge, you had everything, I think that arrogance and ego can really destroy you. This is something that we see even in different experiences that we go through. And that is why this is a quality that I couldn't agree more with you. If you really want to be able to bring about some transformation in the world as a leader, as a follower, we all have to be followers, we all have to be leaders of at different levels, different dimensions. And I think what you said is absolutely true. There is a nuance, there's a difference between not knowing is still pardonable, but when it gets even slightly tainted by that arrogance and ego, that leads to destruction.
I would just like to turn it to what the question that Lakshya had asked me in regarding to the students, of how I would try to address this aspect of humility with the students at school. I would just say the tapasya which all of us have to go through when we have to conquer desire, anger and ego is a very long route. And it is going to be very ascetic in terms of trying to create a context or a situation where we are trying to facilitate this to happen to children. I would just probably replace it with trying to inspire them. So the inspiration of something higher, something greater, it makes us, as I have just now read about what the mother said, that sense of admiration and that sense of, obeisance, which will bring a sense of being inspired. That can uplift the children's consciousness to be able to raise themselves from these, qualities, negative qualities which bring us down. So for us to really overcome this is a long route. So at school, what the focus is to inspire them, to make them to understand what the mother wants the children to understand about the purpose of life. Why are they born? That is what the psychic education speaks about. So to make them aware that there is a greater purpose, there's a greater meaning to life than just go the regular route. So I would just probably work it that way. Okay.
Anyone else? Maybe I can ask one. Uma? Please come. Okay, meanwhile, while others are still wondering what to ask, let me pose a question to ma'am. Ma'am, if I may ask, in Orwell's context, we read, we saw Mother Sri Aurobindo's passage on Mahasaraswati and his emphasis on precision, perfection, perseverance for our pursuit of, progress and going ahead. How do we as a collective, uh, with varying ideas individually, at a collective level, how do you or how do we um, go towards this? What is the path that we can all perhaps agree on? I think nobody disagrees that we need perfection in Orwell. However, there is still some disagreements. Can this pursuit of perfection, be the binding force?
I think that's a very beautiful place where we can apply this. Because when you talk of precision, perfection, and perseverance, which was the key quality of Mahasaraswati, it is, the nuance between what we refer to as art and what we call craft. In art, there's still a lot more creativity. So precision may be there, but there is also that freedom. But then when there is a craft, when there is something which has been repeatedly done, and when there is a precision, you have to follow that path. We call that craft. And that's also very important. In the case of Auroville, if you see the design of the city, just to give an example again, we were all talking about this. The mother had given a design which is very precise. It was not as if there was flexibility for some creative interpretation and say, I'll have it this way, meandering this way. So it was also, and to do that, as we're all seeing, we're all a testimony to it, it's about all of us collectively. There's a lot of churning happening externally, internally, for all of us in this process of persevering. So while we think we're working on the outer, I think there is an equal or a far larger, greater working for each one of us on the inner dimension as well. That perseverance factor which is happening. And also the journey towards perfection, because if we have to move there, then this journey towards perfection is not just something which is a mechanical, material thing alone. That perfection only happens when there's that resonance, when you're doing something with precision, but it is completely complemented with, or it is done with full consciousness, which is what Auroville is about. So any act, it could be arranging this flower here, it could be sometimes protesting. And I think we do that well, isn't it? Everything that we do, whether it's chocolates or whether it's protesting, I think we are trying to do it. But slowly, as we build our muscles on perfecting things, perseverance, precision, somewhere this is a sandbox. We're also her children. We're like little toddlers, infants, crawling, falling, attempting. But slowly, with her gentle love, kindness, inspiration, she's also being very patient with us, but making sure slowly we get into what she wanted us to build. As she says, I see the vision, and you have to allow the city to land. So it's a very broad brush interpretation, as I see, of what Mahasaraswati attribute that we all have to re-invoke in us.
Thank you. Now, anyone inspired to ask a question? It's already 6:10, so it's your last chance, perhaps. Yes, Abhishek, idhar aa jaiye. Yeah, sure.
My name is Dr. Abhishek. By profession, I'm a scientist. And ma'am, it's very happy to see you here for a long time, because the reason to came to Auroville is just you. When I came to meet you in Auroville Foundation, you invited me here for something doing good here in Auroville. And after a long time seeing you here today. So as you say about the COVID-19 situation and all, because I'm working in a hospital, and especially I'm a cancer scientist. So that time government put me the top leadership people from across the India to different zones actually. And that time I have seen whether you have all the qualities of the mothers and everything actually. There's a one quality, I wouldn't say the quality, in the central circle of the qualities like oneness. If everyone follow this oneness, simple the oneness, we have a same organ inside the body, the same kind of the blood inside the body, same color, everything same size of organ and everything. When I do the research, I found many similarities are there. For example, the COVID vaccine, why it takes time? Because the virus was very clever actually. It changes the coating, the protein coating actually. Then the scientists design some vaccine, again they change their nucleic acid or something in RNA and DNA, and then it's really very difficult to handle this. But at least the various people are very helpful, government also very helpful, and people are very good human being. They try to help the people in that situation. So they all come with a oneness. I'm just saying the quality like oneness. If anybody is in a problem, anybody in a stress, everyone should come in a oneness form. Then only that things work. I understand all these 12 qualities like surrender, gratitude, humility and all, but I just want to focus on one central aspect of the mother actually, that's the oneness. If we think about the oneness, if we do things with the oneness, definitely everything will come in certain happy moment or certain good things for the Auroville also and for the outside also. So this oneness comes from within. So I learned this oneness in Auroville especially, and whatever things is happening, but for me always the positive side of the fact, and I still see the oneness in Auroville and this Auroville festival also, and it's very good to see you here for this festival. It's just a remark actually and my suggestion.
But Abhishek, I also want to say in a way what Chhalamayi ji said for the earlier question that I don't know your name, the gentleman. Ramesh ji asked about ego, and so the positive, like she said, instead of laboring so much on something which is now, there's a child here who's come here, happens to be my grandson, and so instead of if there is something ego, or instead of guiding them to fight something, if you appeal to something larger in them. And I think that's about this quality of enlarging our hearts. If that happens, then it's not about me and the other. Then it's oneness, no? If that happens, then I think other differences perhaps melt away, right? And then you develop your patience. Okay, thank you. You want to say something?
Okay. Ma'am, would you like to finish your thought? Would you like to finish your thought? Yes.
I couldn't agree more with Abhishek that this largeness of the heart, why is it that there are some people, even if you, the evolved people, I think the difference is as they're working on the outside, I think the one difference is that they're becoming more and more expanded. So when that oneness in these human beings who are the vibhutis, as they say, when that happens, it has a power to transform people around. So even if, so it cannot be done by a mental argument or whatever. So I think end of the day, while we have to work on all these planes, the planes outside, but I think the key work is about expanding ourselves, and which also means getting over ego, not by, but just by making ourselves larger, expanding ourselves.
Just to add to what Madam said, to be always conscious of this great advent of the supramental consciousness, the descent of that, we have something so supreme, to be always to be conscious and aware of. I think keep forgetting it and then we get into a smallness. So if our consciousness is always kind of lifted to that gift, that divine gift that the Divine Mother and Sri Aurobindo has given us, that probably, if we are able to remember that in our worst kind of situations of conflict, probably it can dissolve that. But it's just that we get disconnected. So yes, keep widening ourselves and be kind of connected with that supreme grace.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Now, we also have in our midst Gautam Da. He was part of our panel yesterday. He is a governing board member, and he would like to add some remarks also.
As for oneness, it is not possible without that expansion of which Madam is speaking. And this expansion means love. So humility has a synonym, it is love. And I spoke of T.S. Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral yesterday, where Eliot says that humility is the most difficult of virtues to achieve, simply because of our ego. And without expansion, and I quote Vivekananda also, contraction is death, expansion is love. So humility is related to the abolition of the ego, and I spoke of 3 stories by Oscar Wilde. I am speaking once again because many of the people here in the audience were absent. It was almost an open empty auditorium. So I spoke of the giant breaking the walls at the end of the story of Selfish Giant, and the giant kneeling before the child, Christ. And there is a response because his death is not an ordinary death, it's a symbolic death. And this death means the death of the ego. And it is strange that his body is covered with flowers. That is what Sri Aurobindo says in Synthesis of Yoga, that there is always an expectation from the divine. Mahafalashu Kodachana is not always right. And we expect love, peace, grace from the other side. And so humility has a very close link with this. And in Auroville, we have to see that in our daily activities, how we are always, because I once again quote from the Hymns to the Mystic Fire, where Sri Aurobindo says, translating a verse, The soul of man is a world full of beings where armies, a house where armies clash to help or hinder, a house where armies clash to help or hinder a supreme conquest. The soul of man is a world full of beings, a house where armies clash to help or hinder a supreme conquest, where the gods are our guests and which the demons strive to possess. So every moment we have to battle with this to achieve this humility and this abdication of the ego from, because His Majesty ego is not willing to abdicate very easily. So always there is that struggle within us, and we have to struggle. And if we examine ourselves, much of the problems of our will go. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, would you like to come here, Maulika? Yes, please. Prasad? Okay, now people are waking up. There are 4 people waiting.
So mostly people see that you are in power, both of you, because you're a principal and you're the secretary of Orville Foundation. But I've also seen how much of a responsibility it is. But in the name of humility, laxity cannot be allowed. And so you have to take tough calls. Dharma is all inclusive, and dharma also means tough calls. But what is that inner dialogue you have at the end of the day which allows you to come and again have the same conversation with those people, probably with whom you've had a very difficult conversation the previous day? Because I've seen it happening, and I always wonder that we all find it very, very uncomfortable that if we have to deal with this, being dismissive is very easy, but you have to come back to the same office, meet the same people, and somehow it always works. So what is that inner dialogue that you have at the end of the day?
So, Malika, very tough question. Yes. As Gautamda just now said, it is a constant reflection, a constant like looking into oneself to be able to remember that we are all in the same journey. That's what at least I try to keep telling myself, that that's the truth, that we are all, just beautifully, as Jayanti ji said, spoke about the little sparks. Just because some sparks are, from the flame of aspiration, the little sparks kind of spread everywhere. And we are all part of that Agni, the yagna, the aspiration which is going on in ourselves and in the universe, to be able to really aspire for the divine, to realize the divine, and then, have the descent and transform ourselves. So the only, probably it may not be that the dialogue goes on so philosophically, but I have to keep reminding myself that it is a team and everyone matters, and everyone together needs to be able to walk the path together with holding hands. So I have to just tell that to myself.
So, Malika, the one beautiful thing also that we all realize, that human beings also are not etched in stone or something. I think we all, just as I show so many perhaps changes, I witness myself, I think I give that leeway to everybody around me. We have to be as accommodating, compassionate. So you might have to deal with some things, you have to do your dharma. So, and as was mentioned, the humility is not about, that doesn't mean on every issue status quo is not, you say, okay, let it go, and tamas or not act. That's not the point. We have to take tough calls, decisions, which may be very painful sometimes, all of that. But I think end of the day, we shouldn't give up hope on human beings, because as Gautamda rightly said, this thing of expansion is nothing but love. And how can you not love yourself, because there's no other? So somewhere we have to come back to that every day, and that is what our small practices, whatever you call it, end of the day, it could be your music, your sadhana, when you're with yourself. That self is not a small sankuchit limited self. That self is a very expanded self, or it could be your meditation. But we need And not only end of the day, I think the day is punctuated with these, which is what keeps all of us going. But we have to do our dharma as well, and not to be, you can't be goody all the time, and yet, because end of the day, we have to do what we have to do. So.
It is on. It is on.
I just walked in 5 minutes ago and I got this tail of the conversation where the expansion is needed. My childhood hero was Alexander the Great, who is an expansionist. And what I wanted to say is that what attracted me to Sri Aurobindo and Mother is that it is applied spirituality. You can apply the spirituality. So I'm going to share with you what Mother said, how to expand ourselves. Mother said, we have an infinitely small ego. To expand it, she gives 2 examples. One, when you are writing a story, instead of you see yourself writing a story, you become the character. And when you're doing a painting, Mother was saying, instead of you think that you are doing the painting, she also said that the quality of the painting will be very bad if you think that you are the painter doing this painting. She says, come out of your infinitely small ego and you become the canvas. You become the brush. You become the color. You become the subject. That way, you are coming out of yourself. So that's my bit of a sharing. This is the last day, I think, the last session. And I was so busy in the ground road work, and finally I managed to come here for 10 minutes. Thank you to give me this opportunity. I could contribute something to you guys. Thank you. I'm doing my dharma also.
Thank you. Preeti.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, of course, it's a struggle to be humble and remember what Abhishek said, oneness, about this oneness, because for me, humility is oneness, our ultimate truth. So my go-to mantra, I just want to share with you all, my go-to mantra is Tat Tvamasi. The whole Gita can be summed up in these 3 words, Tat Tvamasi. I am that, you are that, and all is that. And that leaves no space for ego, because whenever we see this ego bubbling up, you can burst that bubble with this mantra. Realizing that oneness, I'm that, you are that, and all is that. So thank you so much.
Yes, I was first thinking when Laksha came and asked me that I wouldn't speak, but somehow where we are going with this, and also because I realized it's the last evening, and it's the last day of the month, and this was our month of humility, because we are doing each quality 1 month. The first session we had was on humility and power.
Wisdom.
Then it was the second one that I was sitting in on. Okay, so the second one, the first one I was sitting in on. So humility and power. And then as I was listening, suddenly I thought, but humility is a power. Humility is a power, and we're looking at humility and power. And also I was going to give 2 sessions on the 12 qualities and on the city, and humility was the theme. So usually in the research that I do with the 12 qualities and Matrimanya, city, etc., things come to me and then I look at them. So having to talk about humility, I saw that this was not something I had maybe gone so deeply, just staying on a certain level. So I did a session with myself, and it was very interesting. It comes back to what I'm listening to here now. That's why I'm choosing to share it. I put humility in front of myself to see how it felt, what it was, and I realized it was not possible. The moment you tried to capture it, it was disappearing. So the only way to connect with it was to withdraw myself by creating silence, a space where there was nothing else. And in that space, when I did this, there was suddenly a small movement, like a little whirl. And as I kept myself like that, I also took help of gratitude and sincerity, I have to say, because having those next to it made things because each quality has all the other ones in it. As I was in that silence and was getting filled with that this energy could take up its place, first one mantra came and then a second one. It's not something that I use in my daily things. The first thing what came was Om Tat Sat. Later, Tat Tvam Asi. And from this came the sense that humility, and it goes back to what you read from Mother. Humility is with the divine. It is that total surrender. It is us in the divine, and it is the divine in us. Those are the things. So I want to thank Lakshay very, very, very much for what you have brought us with this. And I want to thank, because for me this is the peak of the whole thing tonight, to listen to both of you. And I have seen your school, so I know the work you're doing. And I have worked with your teachers also when we were in Gadipalli. And I have seen Jayanti ji in action these years. And the same question that Malika was putting, I have seen an infinite patience in this. So this is a great thank you for being who you are, both of you, and the work you are doing. Thank you, Lakshay, and thank you, everybody, and how this has allowed all of us to deepen this space so very, very much, which wouldn't have happened without this. Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us of this humility and power being sort of complementary. It's not perhaps, and in that sense, can we also say humility and self-giving is also in a way similar, and perhaps we can say that about all the qualities. And if I may, as a last word to you, Chhalamayi, you grew up in ashram school, and how was your experience of this invoking Mahalakshmi through working, through finding perfection in small work? How is there any anecdotal information, little note with that, if you can close? Any story that comes to you about mother doing something related to perfection? And also, ma'am, if you can give your closing remarks.
Yes, I would like ma'am to give the closing remarks. I would just say that what I understand of what Sri Aurobindo has said, this yuga itself belongs to Mahasaraswati. So I think all the focus, the energies of all of us is directed towards this Shakti. Being blessed by this Shakti and trying to work, everything that the qualities that Sri Aurobindo spoke about, of what you read, it is so visible in the work field today. And that makes it, that gives a certain sense of clarity in terms of how to walk the day, how to go through the day and how to actually bring that consciousness into our work. So I don't want to get into my journey in that sense, but that's what is at the forefront of my awareness in the work of what I'm doing at school.
Thank you.
So I think to sort of sum up, I think this realization that when we believe we are the doers, etc., that actually is not true at all. There's so many things, a million things that could have gone wrong. Isn't it a supreme act of compassion of the divine that a certain set of events in space and time happened for us to be wherever we are, to even survive, to even live? There are so many things that... So when this happens, and also this complete surrender to the divine, to realize we're really grateful for what is happening, I think then every moment becomes a very beautiful gift that we have, an offering. And this is something I realized. I know we have many drawbacks, distortions, even in our senses, the way we perceive things. None of us is perfect. And this is true for, I think, all of us. But with all these the imperfect eyes, the imperfect vision, imperfect in terms of how we assimilate things, listen to things, put it together, piece it together, our mind colors everything. But in spite of it, if we were with sincerity saying that this is the current task given to me, but I know that my instruments may not be perfect, but with this, I'm really trying my sincere best and then offering it to her. I feel it takes everything to a small closure. Then you're not kind of carrying forward some burden with you. So this offering of acknowledging that I'm not perfect, but the attempt is sincere, of trying to offer it to her. So if this is done slowly, she not only makes sure what we do, it's like the story of Valmiki. He sees the two birds and curses them. It's his anger which got the better of him, but the God is infinitely Mahasaraswati. She was on his lips, and look at her compassion. She completely changes the syntax of the words to make it mean something which was the beginning of Ramayana. So that's the infinite compassion that the divine has. It can completely turn things if we do it with that sincerity. So I think.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being present. Thank you for coming to Auroville Festival. And thanks to Arvind ji for the insights about the sense of surrender. Thank you, Gautam da, for your remarks. Thank you very much. It was beautiful. Humility is love, of course. And Chhalamayi ji, thank you for bringing the discernment between the small H and the large H. And ma'am, thank you for bringing this idea of, how do we abdicate the ego in us, perhaps individually and also even collectively. After this, one second. We are a little bit late. At 6 p.m. in Bharat Nivas, Shri Aurobindo Auditorium, we have a musical evening presented by Swaram. And at 7:15, we have a Bharatnatyam performance by Krupa Devi. And with this, actually, our Auroville Festival 2025 comes to the close. And I, like Jaya, I would like to borrow next year's theme, gratitude, to offer to everyone my heartiest love and thanks to all those who have worked in this festival in the last 8 days, some in the 8 days, but many more even before. Thanks to the festival team. I don't want to name the names, but you all know who you are. Thank you very much. Thanks to Auroville Foundation for all your support that you have extended. Thanks to the working groups. Thank you. And different venues of International Zone. This was wonderful this time that we tried to bring all Visitor Center, Bharat Nivas, Unity Pavilion, Savitri Bhavan. I think this is really something that we should continue in all our festivals and events. And numerous others, all the Ammas, Akas, Tambis, Annas. Thank you very much for all your support. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Jaya, a small token of love. Like it says in the bag, humility, it's really humble. Thank you. Jaya, for you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for making time.